Houses.
What books are they reading?
That's right.
All right, now everything is being recorded for posterity.
All right.
That's okay. It's 9:57 though.
Megan, would you say again how one avails themselves of these recordings if they would like to have them?
Absolutely. We are happy to send you all of our another tiny silver lining of holding classes on Zoom is it makes it very easy to record them, and we can supply links to the recordings to anyone who misses a class session or wants to see it again. And we're happy to send you a copy, Kate, and you're welcome to share it on
Thank you.
Any platform. And no, Andy, I did not start that recording, so I don't know who did.
Oh, maybe I did, because
Oh, okay.
on my thing it said stop recording.
This meeting is being recorded. As we mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us, all of our Zoom class sessions are recorded. And if you miss one or you'd like to watch one again, just send an email to Andy or to Ollie, O-L-L-I, at berkshirecc.edu. And we will be happy to send you the link to the class session. And we are delighted to be here today. And we want to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth, which is a holiday celebrating the ending of enslavement of human beings in the United States. And I want to honor Kate Maguire for closing her offices today in honor of Juneteenth, and also for being here today despite that. We appreciate that, and we appreciate everything you do. This class session is in the webinar format, so we encourage very much questions and comments, especially during the conversation and after. They will be addressed after the conversation happens. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A, which can be found at the bottom of your screen on most devices. If you can't find the menu, just bring your cursor down to the bottom of your screen and it should pop up. So I'd now like to introduce Nancy Vale and Naomi Spatz. They are the co-moderators and founders of this series of wonderful classes, and they will introduce our speakers today. Thank you, Naomi and Nancy.
Welcome, everybody. We're very, very happy to see you all today once again. This has been an interesting few sessions we've had. When Naomi and I originally discussed this, we thought we wouldn't be able to do our course this year because we said there's no season. What will we have previews of? Nothing. But then having conversations with Megan and a few other people, we all came to the conclusion that no, there was a great deal we could talk about together. And voila, here we are. And it has been very, very illuminating for me. And I think for everybody that has been listening to these wonderful people, the critics and the theater artistic directors talk about what life is like for them now with their theaters, with their life. As Kate told us before many of you came on, her daughter has been in the thick of it in New York City. So all of us are going through things in our private lives that touch our public lives and our livelihoods. Okay, so that being said, my duty today is to introduce Barbara Waldinger, who will be having a discussion with Kate Maguire of the Berkshire Theater Group. Barbara, as we all know, it is, well, maybe we don't all know this, but she is one of the 4 horsewomen of the apocalypse, as I'm beginning to call us, which is our group that we have for play reading. It's a special interest group of Ollie's that involves myself and Naomi and Barbara and Carol Fisher, who head up a great gang of people, and we read plays aloud and applaud ourselves. So we have our own little theater going on Zoom while we don't have our big theaters going. So Barbara as everyone knows, I think by now, is married to Jesse Waldinger, another force to be reckoned with at Ollie and everywhere else. Barbara has her PhD in theater from the City University of New York, and she taught at Queens College, Hofstra, and Marymount, Manhattan, for a period of over 25 years. This is her 18th year as artistic director of the HRC Showcase, which I think many of you have gone to see their work in Hudson, where they read plays after rehearsing them, new plays, and Barbara directs and stages these readings, and they're wonderful. I've been to several of them.
Thank you.
She's a full-time member of the Berkshire community. She's been teaching for Ollie for quite some time, and at the Temple Anshe, that's part, she teaches there as well. She's a very important part of PIP, PIP, which stands for Plays in Progress. And that's a group that meets regularly and evaluates plays, reading them and discussing them and helping playwrights with their work. So I will say that we all have read Barbara's reviews in the past. Unfortunately, we're not reading you now, Barbara, and we're missing that. I, for one, am missing it a lot. She's also the reviewer for the online publication of Berkshire on Stage, and a feature writer for the Eagle. So, Barbara, we'll be interested to hear what you want to talk about with Kate, and we'll hold our questions till after. Welcome, Barbara.
Thanks, Nancy.
And I have the honor and pleasure to introduce Kate Maguire, though probably she needs no introduction. She's one of the most active theater people in the Berkshires. Right now, she's the artistic director and CEO of the Berkshire Theater Group. She oversaw the merger between two historic groups, the Berkshire Theater Festival and the Colonial. And now she is running the Colonial, the Garage, the Fitzpatrick, the Unicorn, but even more remarkable right now, as there's not a theater season, she's been setting up various programs to include children, adults, and every kind of thing. Her imagination, I guess, is just incredible. It is unending. And we're really very pleased with all the work that you're doing, that you're able to come and talk with us today. And we wish you more theater and less disease and more contact with the public. I cannot imagine how withdrawn you must feel personally because of all extraordinary activities with the theater. Also, I just learned today is that she started out life as an actress at age 4. A lot's happened. You've gone a long way, Miss Kate. Thank you so very much. I'll turn it over. And anything else that you want to talk about of what you're doing now, of course, will be open for the interview with Barbara. Thank you again. Barbara, take it away.
Thanks, Naomi. So Kate, so you started out as an actress at 4.
4 years old I was.
How did you come from there to here?
Oh my goodness. You know, some of you may know this story, but my mother trotted me off to drama and elocution lessons at 4 years old. I always thought it was because my voice was so loud and I screamed so much that she wanted to contain me somehow, and she'd rather someone else listen to me screaming for an hour a week at least. But my mother, who was living with us when she became ill in her later years, and right before she passed, she started talking about why sending me off to those drama classes was so important. She was from a Greek immigrant family. There were 8 children, and none of the kids could speak English when they started school. And what my mother began to realize is how powerful communication is, and communicating well is so important. And so her desire for me to be in drama and elocution lessons had nothing to do with the volume of my voice, even though she was always telling me to lower it. It had to do with her wanting for me to be able to understand stories and to be able to tell her and our stories and to be able to speak clearly and powerfully. And when my mother told me that, when she was 88 years old, and this was only 4 years ago, my mother passed, but all of a sudden my life became crystal clear. I just all of a sudden realized why I became a producer and why I wanted to create the education program that we have. And I understood fundamentally and profoundly how important the theater is and what space it gives to tell all of our stories. You know, on this day, on Juneteenth, when some of us are really learning more powerfully about what this day means, the ability to tell stories on our stages feels even more important, and that we can't feels even sadder.
Wow. So
Yes.
I'm going to skip over to, I wanted to ask you some things about the No Boundaries in Art program, because I found that so moving, so important. And I looked, and that is in case, I don't know if you want to tell it, but.
Oh no, go ahead, please. I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I saw that it is, I looked back at it, saw that it was a bi-monthly video series that donated part of its proceeds to youth in recovery and education programs, and that it had each week a different set, or twice a month segments that allowed the speakers freedom of expression through short stories, poems, and personal reflections. I wondered, how did that start? How did you get the idea for this? Because I loved it. I looked forward to
it. Also includes art shows. I'm so glad.
Oh, nice.
Yes, it includes art shows now. And so when you come to the Colonial, many of you see that there's works of art up on the stage. It's all curated by a wonderful woman in our community named Stephanie Cohen. And she works with local artists, and each show is dedicated to a certain theme. We are hoping to get a theme up about the right to vote and urging folks to get out to vote before the November elections. And those dollars get split. So some of the dollars comes to the Berkshire Theater Education Program, and some of the dollars go to special programs that Stephanie recognizes that are in need in our community. No Boundaries in Art got started when children were put in cages by the Trump administration. No Boundaries in Art got started because we recognized that the vulnerable were not having a platform to speak. And so I think that one of the first pieces up there was a poem that a young immigrant sent to me about being an immigrant. And I read it. It was so powerful. It's also, you know, the wonderful thing about theater is the ability to step into someone else's shoes. And you know this, Barbara, because you direct. So you see people climb into someone else's shoes as an actor and begin to understand what path that person has walked. And so No Boundaries in Art was a way of providing a platform for those who may not have a platform. And No Boundaries in Art really refers to, we do not censor in the theater. There is no censorship in the theater. There cannot be. It was also a reaction to this administration stamping and stomping on the right of the free press, which continues to this day. And while I know that, you know, at times we're not supposed to talk about politics, it feels like there is an urgency these days to speaking out. Yes. Because as we look around, so many of our rights are being stepped on.
Absolutely. I would like to say to the people watching that I was able to look back at that first episode online and to see it again. It's February 3rd, 2017, and the poem is called Home by Warson Shire. And this poem, it was beautiful the way you read it. It delivered a powerful rebuke to those who turn back asylum seekers. And the theme of that poem was they have to leave home, not that they want to, but they have to, because home won't let them stay.
It's a gorgeous poem, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
And also, I think that probably everyone listening right now, I spoke about my mother's family who came here for better lives.
Mhm.
I mean, the truth is that most of our immigrants, if not all, are coming here because of the promise of America.
Yes.
And this is a great week because of the Supreme Court ruling on DACA.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Another episode that I thought was also so emotionally powerful was when Roselle Shartok spoke about a new curriculum that she was writing for Monument Mountain High School about the Holocaust, called Can It Happen Again? Chronicles of the Holocaust. And to see that her answer was a resounding yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Roselle
yes.
has done so much work and did so much great work with students to make sure that they read that history.
Yes.
Really important.
There's so much that we do not learn in school.
Right.
I just admire these educators who say, throw out what we did instead of name the 3 causes of the American Revolution. You know, it's like,
yes,
put in things that are meaningful.
exactly.
And that it's so important. So today, Juneteenth, you canceled everything. And by everything, I started looking at the things that are being offered by BTG online.
Mhm.
And I made this list that goes pages and pages. Like, for example, Caroline's Craft Corner, or online playwriting, theater book club, baking with Savannah, Presidents in Crisis, a 6-part series. Where did you get all these ideas? It's really outside the box, this stuff.
Well, when you put us, when you take away all of our work, we've got to find something to be creative about. When you take away our stages, we have to find some platform, don't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, the good news is that many of those people are right in our company. The series you just talked about is David Auerbach, one of your Ollie speakers, has done an incredible series on so many fabulous historical topics. And David Auerbach, full transparency, is on the board of trustees at Berkshire Theater Group. He's on the executive committee, a wonderful volunteer. And he immediately came to mind because of the series of talks that he's given. And the history that he reveals is so important for us to remember, as we were just discussing, Barbara. Yes. And then, of course, there's others like Savannah, who's baking, and it's just kind of fun. We have some craft shows, Pilates exercises, but Hannah Cohen, one of the most incredible young violinists, on doing some beautiful playing. So once we started, it was hard to stop. David Adkins, who's one of our great actors, has done several interviews with some extraordinary people. Katie Birnbaum, one of our young actresses, has so many friends that are in important shows in New York City, and she's pulled them in for interviews and discussions about their work. So yes, there's a good variety up there.
Yes. And then there's all these education programs. You have a virtual after-school curriculum that's still going now.
Yes,
yes. What's that like?
Well, we work in all of the schools in Berkshire County. We serve 13,000 kids annually of the 16,000. And those programs are either in the schools, they're after-school programs. Those kids are on our stages. They're a huge part of who we are. And when the schools shut down, Allison Rochelle Bales and Travis Daly, who run our education program, kept talking with the teachers and the teachers ask that we put things together specifically to send home. So we're still part of the curriculum, and those programs are going home to the kids. The tour that we do, we work with Mary Pope Osborne. Mary Pope Osborne has written the Magic Treehouse books for kids.
Oh, wow.
It's a wonderful series. My son grew up on those books.
Oh, wow.
And as some of you know, Mary Pope Osborne lives in the Berkshires. And she asked us about 3 years ago if we would be interested in taking her books and creating our tours on the basis of a Magic Treehouse story. And so we've done it now for 3 years. The folks that are out on those tours to schools are school kids. So, you know, our program has grown so much that we have some very wonderful and talented kids that should be in New York on Broadway, but they're in school in Berkshire County. And so on Fridays, they're excused from their daily classes and they're out on tour with Magic Treehouse story. So when school shut down, Travis Daly pulled some of those kids back in, and they're doing some of the online curriculum as well.
Wow. Is it telling stories or is it plays?
When we go into a school, we teach each child, or we work with each child to write a one-act play. So every single child is writing a one-act play, telling a piece of their own story, creating characters based on archetypes, understanding what story means. And then at the end of the 13-week period it's about 13 weeks that we're in the schools, some of the plays are selected and performed. Some of those young playwrights who really want to continue playwriting will come to us in the summer and do camp season sessions with us. So right now we're trying to figure out how do we put virtual camps together so those kids can continue as well.
But the playwriting program continues online now?
The playwriting program will continue till the end of school. I believe that Allison and Travis are talking to the schools right now about summer activities as well.
Wow, wow. And this, are a lot of these kids the ones who take part in your big musicals that involve the whole
Absolutely, they are. The ones that are, particularly the kids that are on tour, because you can imagine it's a lot to ask of a school to there are 16 kids that participate in the tour. So those 16 kids are out most Fridays. And the school is granting them permission because they recognize the value of the work and what they're doing when they're out. And those kids are also, they're doing really well, maintaining their studies. It's just a wonderful relationship with the school. And those kids in particular are the ones that are on our stages in Christmas Carol or in Willy Wonka or in whatever we're doing on the stage, along with about 100 other school children.
So you have open auditions. Any young person can audition?
Any young person can audition. And I have to say that we try to make sure that everybody gets a part.
And what is that like for Travis? He directs?
Travis directs those shows.
I
have no idea how he does that. I mean, can you imagine directing 100 to 120 kids? They come off and the shows are just extraordinary. People are crying at the end of those shows because of what they've just seen, the energy on stage, the focus, the teamwork that's been developed. And particularly the older kids that have been with us for a while are mentoring the younger ones. Some of the kids that are working with us come back to us as apprentices when they're in college, or come back to join us on stage later as professional actors. I mean, that's how long we've been doing this. Berkshire Theater Festival, as you know, is almost 100 years old. And believe me, I feel 100 years old these days. But the education program, it's critical to who we are. It is at the center of our mission. And the mature actors, the professional actors, that come to visit us each summer become as enamored of those programs as they are of everything else that we're doing, and as they are of the Berkshires themselves. So many of those artists will go into the rehearsal, talk to the kids are working alongside them. It's terrific, terrific. I'm very proud of the program.
Are you hoping to do another Christmas Carol this year?
You know, when we had to go through relooking at everything, one of the first things we realized we were not going to be able to accomplish was the production of Peter Pan that we wanted to do this summer, our community production. And so, as I do live with Scrooge,
Yes.
actor Hill, I was able to turn to him very quickly and say, do you think Scrooge would like to take a little rest this year? And maybe we put Peter Pan in December.
Wow.
So I don't know, Barbara. I don't know what our world will look like. I'm hoping that our world will look like a place that we can welcome back kids onto our stage,
So good.
and that Peter Pan can soar in that colonial theater. My fingers are crossed. I think it will be a magical event for our community, but we shall see, won't we?
Yes, yes. So now to you as artistic director and CEO, I've always, people have always thought that a business person and an arts person can't really live together in one brain, but you managed to do both. And I wondered how that goes.
I've had some extraordinary and unique teachers over the years. As soon as you said what you just said, I was remembering being in a tiny office when I worked years and years ago at Shakespeare and Company. I was there for a few years in the 80s, in the late 80s. And there was a wonderful trustee named Jim Michaelman. Enid Michaelman, of course, is a wonderful member of our community. And Jim taught me how to run a computer. And he would sit there and just sort of bellow at me like, what are you doing? Don't press that button. But I had these mentors and I became sort of fascinated with the business side. And what I realized is I can't accomplish what I want artistically if we don't have a foundation that is somewhat balanced. It's difficult to balance all the time in the not-for-profit world, but we need a financial foundation that's strong, and we need to be able to talk to people about why they should give to our organization. A lot of it is about fundraising. And so since I've been doing this since I was 4 years old, I've learned a lot and taken and been very gratified by the support and mentorship I've been given by so many people in our business community as well as in our artistic community. And when I got to Berkshire Theater Festival, I first was the managing director. So I really was responsible for the CEO side of things. And then I worked for a couple of years, the first couple of years, with an artistic director, a wonderful man named Arthur Storch, who was one of the greats in the American theater. He founded Syracuse Stage in New York, directed on Broadway for many years. And Arthur retired after a couple of years. He had come out of retirement and decided he really did want to be in retirement. And so he retired. And the board, wonderful Fred Rutberg was on the board then, still on our emeritus board. But the board turned to me and said, you know both sides of this. So what if we merge the two? And that was an experiment that we started 24 years ago. And yeah. Wow. And so I feel very, very lucky, but I also have a great staff. And this staff, in days like this, I can't even begin to tell you how honored I am to work with the people that I work with. Some of whom, like Allison Bales, who I mentioned, who runs the education program, she and I have been at the Berkshire Theater. This would now be our 26th year together. So many staff members that have been with us for a long time, young people who have just begun with us and didn't even get to their first season. Our staff members. And all week long, they're working hard to maintain our buildings, maintain our technical instruments, and try to put plans in place to get to something this summer. We're hopeful.
Oh, so, and what do you think you might be able to get to?
Well, we're in the process of getting permits right now. A permit to put up a tent adjacent to the Colonial Theater. Nice. Where we can provide entertainment for our audiences. We are actively working with Actors Equity Association, which is our union, to see when we can get actors back to work. All of this in coordination with local health department, working with the governor's office, CDC guidelines, working with every doctor that we know to try to make sure everything is safe. And the reason for the tent is that I think that people may feel a little more secure in being in an outdoor environment.
Mhm.
We're also looking towards and working to open the grounds at Stockbridge so that we can have some seating outside the patio at the Unicorn, that lovely spot,
Yes.
and some pop-up entertainment on the grounds.
Mhm.
And the phase 3 should be starting on June 29th. The state, and particularly Berkshire County, has responded so well to what's been asked of all of us that COVID feels to be under control, whatever that means, without a vaccine.
Mhm.
But there have been no new cases in Berkshire County in several days. The numbers seem to be in a good place. And hopefully this will continue and we can get to phase 3 and we can provide some entertainment late July into August.
So now you're talking about a tent next to the Colonial. Did you ever consider a tent on the Stockbridge grounds?
We did, but even on the stocks and a lot of volume, and there are a lot of neighbors very close to that property. And so what we're looking towards is just something right before sunset. And I think it will be lovely.
Yes.
I really do think it will be lovely. We don't want to disturb folks right now. We understand people are going through all kinds of emotions and feelings and desires for privacy. And so being able to have entertainment on the grounds in Stockbridge feels essential. First of all, in the entire history of Berkshire Theater Festival, it's never shut down. There was one summer during World War II where we had a young apprentice company performing, but we still had something being performed.
Mm.
So we have to have something.
Yes.
If just to satisfy our souls for a few evenings.
So I would like to jump in and ask the people who are listening to use the chat or the Q&A. I know that artistic directors would like to know what would make you comfortable.
Yes,
People
please.
listening. What would bring you back to the theater? What would you
Right.
like to see? So if you could just put in some responses to that, that would be great.
And the other thing, Barbara, that we're looking to do is to do a drive-in theater. And we're talking with the city right now about what the location for that will be. That will probably happen in July.
So now I know that each theater company is coming at this in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And like Shakespeare and Company is also talking about a drive-in.
Yep.
Is there any collaboration among these companies?
Julie Boyd and I are on the phone rather frequently, actually, because I think that we're the two that are trying to get some performances up and running and working actively with the unions. And so we talk frequently about the safety guidelines. What should we be putting in place? How do we make people feel secure? So it's actually been really wonderful to collaborate with her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Can I go back to now the plays that, let's say you were in a real season and doing real plays.
Yep.
How do you get these plays? Is it open admissions? Do you have, what's the process like?
Well, I can actually speak to a play called The La Vida's Landlord. A play that simply came across my desk like other plays. It was sort of a cold landing, if you will. And I gave it to an associate, one of my artistic associates, to read. And the response was, there is really something here that's very interesting. This play is about immigrants and told in this very interesting way, in that It's two characters. Tell me if I'm misremembering, but they never really speak to each other. They
So
speak
letter writing.
through letter writing
Yes.
and really tell interesting stories about their backgrounds and what it's like to be an immigrant in this country.
Yes.
Written by a gentleman named Larry Weinstein from the Boston Cambridge. And so when I read it, I was completely fascinated. Called Larry and said, I'd like to do a reading of this piece. And so that was on our schedule to be done. And you were going to direct, but
Yes.
we will get to it.
Thank you.
And I say that because sometimes pieces just come out of the blue. I do remember going through a stack of plays in my office and pulling out a play that I had not gotten to, that I had not read. It was called Wit.
Wow.
Yes, it was after it won all the awards and movies were made. And I thought, well, I missed that one. I mean, I probably get 50 plays a week that
Oh
get
my
sent. And so I wish I could say that we get to all of them, but we don't. Sometimes, it's like the play by Larry, it just strikes me, and it strikes me as really timely. It does help that there's two characters. Sometimes when a play comes to me and there's 30 characters listed, I don't know how to afford that. But sometimes David Auburn, who directs with us, will say, I really want to get to this play. Could I direct this? This year we were going to do Uncle Vanya. He was really interested, has asked about it before. And David is a brilliant mind. He's a brilliant playwright, as you know, Pulitzer Prize winner for Proof, and a great director as well. And so it's hard for me to say no because I know what he's going to create is going to be remarkable. We were to do a production of Godspell, which we're still in discussion with Equity about. So we'll see what happens. I would really love nothing better than for under that tent, adjacent to the Colonial, for wonderful voices to be singing God Save the People right now.
Ah, would that be wonderful? God.
I think it would be wonderful. So we'll see if we get to that.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
know very, very soon.
Now you have 4 different theaters. Within the Colonial, there's the Garage, so I guess that's 2, and then 2 others. Do you have ideas about each different theater having certain types of work in it?
Yep. And then I also sort of like to mix it up. You know, we've been doing musicals in the Unicorn for a few years. We did Hair, we did Working last year. And so when I decided to do Godspell, I think that my executive director, Nick Paleologos, who I work with closely, he said, there's not going to be enough seats in the Unicorn. I said, no, I think we're going to do that at the main stage. I think that'll be kind of funky to do it in the main stage and fun. The actors can be all over the place, mingling with the audience. What a concept that will no longer happen.
Right, in the middle of the pandemic, right?
No more mingling.
Oh, God.
But I just thought, I think, you know, every once in a while it's good to switch it up. Although the main stage is generally known for being our home for classics, particularly
That's
American classics.
Right.
Hmm?
The
Fitzpatrick and Stockbridge. And so I don't play with that too much. Also, that space is a traditional space.
Proscenium.
And so, yes, proscenium and just the structure of the building sort of speaks to a certain theme, if you will, atmosphere, and begs for a certain kind of play, if you will. The Unicorn is definitely the theater where we can present work that is provocative, where we can take a play and turn it on its head and look at it in a very new and interesting way. That outdoor patio has proven to be a real gathering place for people either before a performance or after a performance to discuss what they're about to see or what they've just seen. So the unicorn is just a little gem, isn't it?
Yes,
To be able to do all
absolutely.
kinds of work.
Yes.
The garage has become a home for comedians, young musicians, and there's a bar right there so people can grab a drink, sit down at a little cafe table and just take in some music and comedy. And the Colonial, of course, is that gorgeous, gorgeous theater where directors walk in who have traveled the world and immediately say, this is one of the most beautiful theaters in the world.
Mm.
Just a great space.
Yes.
We're really fortunate.
And then you have that backstage at the Colonial where you've had some events.
Yes, we had a dinner there last year when Hershey Felder was with us in a performance, the great Hershey Felder, who is actually doing a virtual performance with us of his piece on Beethoven. And that will be July 12th. So we just announced this. You can go onto our website and find out more information. For those of you that don't know Hershey Felder, he's an extraordinary, extraordinary artist.
Terrific.
And he's put together a series of shows on incredible artists. Beethoven is one of those artists. Hershey Felder is quarantined at his home in Italy right now, that he has turned into a sound studio and becomes the setting for these pieces.
Oh,
So I'm expecting July 12th to be really wonderful and
yes.
beautifully done. But that backspace last year was turned into a dinner party before Hershey's performance. So that was fun. And one day we'll get to more of those.
And how, another thing about your theater and others, some theaters seem to think it's important to have name recognition or plays that they want to move on to.
Sure.
Like Williamstown seems to be one of those.
Yeah.
And how important is that to you?
It's very, very important for us to do work of quality. It is also important to work with artists that are fresh or producers that are fresh. So when we did Rock and Roll Man last year, and we worked with a producer named Rose Caola, who's an extraordinary producer in New York. She's won several Tony Awards for some of the pieces that she's produced. And when she came to me and said that she wanted to try this new piece out, I thought the piece was fascinating, the Alan Freed story.
Yes.
The artist that he promoted, that period of time was really an important period of time that broke down barriers. And I wanted to work with Rose. I wanted to know what that world, I mean, that was a huge undertaking for us. And we succeeded in mounting a really technical sort of spectacle.
Yes.
So that was fun and important for the theater, I think. It's also important, I think, to do new plays, to make sure that there are new voices out there. And sometimes those pieces have gotten picked up and gone on to other theaters. So the year that we moved Children of a Lesser God, which we did at the Fitzpatrick Main Stage, Kenny Leon directed, we moved that to New York. Dutch Masters, a play that we did many years ago by one of our company members, a young artist named Greg Keller, wrote the piece. And the same year that Children of a Lesser God opened on Broadway, Dutch Masters opened in a small theater in New York as well. And it was really exciting and just kind of wonderful to see that that play Dutch Masters that was done 10 or 12 years ago finally found a home in New York. These things can take a long time.
But your theater feels like the Berkshire. The Berkshires are the most important thing. The intimacy, the community. It's not so much, let's see who we can get here. It's more like, let's involve the community.
Let's involve the community. Let's walk alongside the audience. Let's listen to the audience. Let's sort of figure out what the next step is. Let's listen to the news and figure out where our world is and what we're all hungry to learn about, to focus on perhaps. And most often great actors want to be involved in that kind of work, and sometimes it moves on, which is terrific for the theater.
So another question being that it's Juneteenth, how do you think about diversity in your theater, in your company, in your directors, your staff?
the season that we had planned had a diversity of voices. Godspell was completely a company full of color and diversity, and the choreographer is one of our favorite African-American artists, a guy named Jerry McIntyre, who just brings incredible voice and music to our stages. Directed by Alan Filderman, who's worked with us for years. I think that as I say that, I also recognize that we can do more. And that I can continue to listen. I hear myself as I speak sometimes, especially recently, and I find myself feeling sometimes defensive and thinking, oh, but I don't think that way. And then I pause and I even wonder why I'm feeling defensive and why I'm just not taking 10 steps back to hear what's being said to me. I have a 4-year-old grandson who is wearing a mask when he's outside in the world, and who went with his mom to a beautiful march last Sunday in Pittsfield. It was the Interfaith March for Black Lives Matter. And so we're reading books to him. And it is a time for us all, I think, to think about certainly to recognize that Black Lives Matter, and to recognize that in our own faiths, we are taught to look at people with kindness and understanding. And goodness knows we don't want any of the atrocities of the past to repeat themselves in any form. So how do we continue to move forward in the most civilized way? And I think that at Berkshire Theater, we can do better in including more voices. No Boundaries in Art was a step, but there are greater steps that we can take and that we will be talking about.
One thing that we haven't talked a lot about is your apprentice program. How does that work? I mean, are these kids, well, I know some of them are the kids that grew up in your musicals, but
that's right. So in the summer, we have about 175 to 200 people with us each summer. We're a staff during the winter months of about 24. So that increases dramatically. And about 80 of those folks that come to us in the summer are interns at college levels. They intern with us in technical department, administrative department, on our stages as young actors in training. We reach out to all of the colleges across the country. Some of these folks come to us because they've heard about the program in the past, and what they're getting is experience working at a professional theater alongside professionals. So many of these kids go on to have professional careers, and their careers are enhanced because of the connections that they've made at Berkshire Theater. It's a great program, and began in Berkshire Theater Festival was created in 1928. The Apprentice program was born in 1929. 2 of its first apprentices were young women named Jane Wyatt and Katharine Hepburn.
Oh my goodness.
And Katharine Hepburn hated every minute of being an apprentice.
Why?
So the stories, well, I think Jane Wyatt got the lead in the production for one thing. So that'll always cause trouble. But she just didn't care for being an apprentice, as I understand it. Now that could be legend. But we have this great collection of archives that our wonderful grant writer and archivist Lillian Lee has gone into and does for amazing displays. She's actually going to start putting stuff up online because she's got a little bit of time to go into the stories now. Yes. And the stories that are in our archives really reflect the growth of the American theater. The theater mirrors that growth.
Yes.
Amazing stories and letters and pictures of the artists over the years.
All those years. Wow.
Yeah.
So last season, I was able to interview some of your directors and actors for some preview pieces that I wrote.
Yeah.
And
We love your preview pieces. We love your writing, Barbara.
Thank you. Berkshire on Stage just closed down for good. So we have a bunch of theater critics looking around. What do we do?
There we go.
Not only do we have no plays.
Maybe I'll start my own newspaper for critics.
That's right. That's right. So I was so impressed because the people that you bring up, the directors, the actors, the designers, they seem to be having such a terrific time, and they have this admiration and respect for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what a great place this must be to work. And I wondered, how do you do that? Do you know these people will get along? Is it totally luck? How does it happen?
You work like heck to make sure you gather talented and kind people.
Yes, I think that's so important. It's both, not just one.
There's a lot of talent in every industry. Making sure that there's a level of kindness, especially among those that are in positions of authority, the directors, the choreographers, the designers, because they're working with young people. And our role, especially because we're not-for-profit, we have not-for-profit status because we're meant to be an educational institution. Otherwise, we'd be a producing company in New York. But we're not-for-profit theater, and we're meant to be about education. And so ensuring that all those young people are going to get educated about what it means to be in our business. And to be in our business at a certain point is about sacrificing. You don't know sometimes where your next paycheck is coming from. You have to recognize sometimes that as an actor, you're really at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, it's just a difficult place to be.
Yes.
And so how do you get through life knowing that the playwright, the director, there may be a whole host of people, the agent is speaking for you. So how do you hold on to your integrity in that business and continue to be generous?
And how do you develop a tough skin, because you have to have that for auditions and rejections, and yet be open to express your feelings and your emotions? How do you do that?
I think that I've always said that if you can last 6 years, although probably 7 or 8 now, in New York City, then you'll make it. Whether it's through attrition, because so many people can't make it that long, or just because you figured out your path. You've lasted. You know you want to be an actor because everything is staked against you. And it is about developing a thick skin. It's just also about having enough faith in your own talent to know that somehow what you're doing and what you're expressing is important enough. And to be able to do that without a sense of arrogance, because the artist has to be able to listen to what's going on in the human heart, not just their own heart, but to other hearts as well. So you're right, Barbara, it is. How do you get through, develop the toughness and remain open?
Yes, that's so hard. And you said something about, you said in your No Boundary in Art, your first episode, the power of theater lies in its ability to transform our understanding of all human experience. I love that. I think you sort of, you live it, you create it around you, and it's a joyful place.
It's so joyful. I mean, there really isn't much better than listen to a beautiful voice sing some great song, or sitting there in pure laughter. All of that is so wonderful. But the idea that you can be seated for an hour or 2 hours and new thoughts can come to you about what the human experience is, some deeper level of understanding of who someone else is, of who the other is. That's why the theater has existed since the Greeks, and why, even though we're going through this, it really is a horrible time.
Yes.
Even though we're going through this, I have complete faith that the theater will continue because it's so needed.
And how many times have people said, the theater is dying? And it's always
The theater
resurrecting
is dying.
itself.
I mean, believe me, there are weeks where I think, and where are we going to get that check for that thing that we need next week? When I think, oh my God, should we go on?
Oh my goodness.
We go on.
We go on. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask our listeners that they could
I
respond
really
on?
would love to know the question that you asked before. And that is, do folks think that they would like to sit outdoors in August for some entertainment?
Right.
Do folks feel comfortable to go inside a theater yet?
And it's so individual.
I know.
Yeah, it's frightening, and each person reacts in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't mind if, if folks wanted to just send in their thoughts to our website. You can go onto social media, any form, and just let me know what you're thinking. Because we want to be able to present something. I'm just hoping that people want to be able to see something in August and that they're ready.
I know they'll want to. It's a matter of ready, I think.
Yes. I see someone saying not inside yet, but maybe outside. That makes me feel good.
It's good. So I think maybe it's time to hear some of these questions.
Yes.
Let's see what we can do. Is someone going to read them?
Yeah, a few comments. Sorry, one second.
I have a question. One of my earliest memories of seeing something at the Unicorn, which I fell in love with. I don't even really remember the message anymore, but it was Blues Over Alabama Skies.
Yes. Wasn't that a great
happened to it.
play?
Hmm?
That was actually at the Fitzpatrick, Naomi.
Was it? Oh.
Yeah, it was at the Fitzpatrick, directed by a great, well, he was young then, named Tim Douglas. And we did it as a co-production with the Actors Theater of Louisville. So after it left us, it went to the Actors Theater of Louisville, where it had a very successful run. That's an interesting play. I should look at that play again. That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was sort of almost my introduction to you, Sue. But it's interesting that I cannot really remember the story. I just remember being blown away by it. And
it was a story about a family and an introduction into a life in Alabama that we often didn't get to see. Great performers. I'm going to pull that play up again, Naomi. That's good. It's certainly worth giving a read to.
Yeah, I don't know if it would hold up, and whether in this climate, whether it, how it works in this climate, because sometimes you read something that later you say, oh my God, that's embarrassing or not. But good, I'm delighted.
I will look. Thank you.
By the way, as far as the outdoors in August, were you thinking of the evening or the night? Because you might also be fighting, 90-degree temperatures, which is a...
Yes, we're thinking of the evening, so it'll be a little cooler. And definitely nice spray for bugs. This is the first year I've sprayed my entire yard, that organic spray. And it makes such a difference.
I thought you and Julie were going to spray all of Pittsfield.
We're going to spray all of Berkshire County.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
See, I said you had this vision.
I wonder if we set out a fundraising campaign to do that, how that campaign would do.
That's right. So, Andy, we have some questions.
We do. We have an earlier comment from Leo Locke. The best experience of my life was being in the annual community production of Oliver many years ago. I loved being on the Stockbridge campus and working with Travis and Gray. Thank you, Kate, for your unfailing kindness and support.
Oh, Leo Locke, how are you? It's so good to hear your voice. Yay.
Another question, what would drive-in theater be like?
Much like what I remember from when I was a young girl. The only difference is that the sound comes through your radio now. When I used to go, they had those big clunking things that, you put into your car. I don't know if any of your folks have gone to the Hollywood Drive-In, which is about an hour drive or so from Pittsfield. But we have a screen coming in. We've gotten a screen. So we have the sound system. Cars will be distanced from each other, and we'll show one movie. So we're looking at a spot in Pittsfield that has some privacy, and I was hoping that I would know this morning to be able to announce this, but I should know by the end of the day, and it's looking very good.
We could have made news, right?
I know. And we'll probably start around 8:30, which feels like sunset to me.
That's a movie or a play?
Movie.
Ah, you know, Shakespeare has asked for permission.
Yep.
For
I think
Stockbridge.
Berkshire is going to do them too. I think we'll have room for about 75 cars. So and we're really gearing the entertainment towards family entertainment for July, and then shift it up a little bit in August.
Because I think Shakespeare said, Alan said 42 cars for his drive-in.
Yep.
So, I mean, it was sort of interesting how we all got so excited hearing about a drive-in movie. I mean, it was progressed, so, you know.
New world.
A lot of support for the idea of doing theater in a tent, although concerns that you had already addressed about temperature. Do you think you'll be able to serve enough people in that environment while still maintaining social distance?
Yes, all of the plans. Well, do I think we'll be able to serve enough? We certainly won't be able to serve as many as we would like, but everything has been spaced out so that there is social distancing, and also social distancing for the actors and the performers on stage. So we've gone through, we have a 25-page health manual that we've developed. I think, and it has been looked at by just about everyone. So I'm feeling pretty positive about it. And the audiences will be given a manual as well, so they understand everything. No, we won't be doing ticketing as we've done it in the past. So your ticket won't be collected. It's all no touch kind of experience that we're looking at right now. I hope I can hug everyone again next year. I miss hugging people.
I love your idea of having pop-ups around the theater. Around
On the grounds at Stockbridge. I do too. I just think that to have a couple of dancers pop up on the grounds would be absolutely lovely. To have a beautiful violinist pop up, or to have someone all of a sudden pop up that can do a speech or a poem, or do a tiny little scene from a piece.
Or do a monologue as well. You know.
Exactly.
That's a nice setting for it.
It feels good.
And do you have a sense of what the ticket payment schedule might be like for these alternate theater type productions? Would it be similar to before?
Ticket prices really are going to, what we're trying to do right now is schedule the artists or the production. We're still, remember, in consultation with the Actors Equity right now. And then we'll know what the economic model should look like. So we try to make sure that ticket prices are affordable, and they'll be based on what we've charged in the past. We may have to charge a couple extra dollars. We may be able to charge less for the experience at Stockbridge. Depending on who the artist is, will also make some difference if we're doing, say, a concert.
Are you free to talk about what the difficult point is with Actors Equity? I mean, we know that, of course, actors want to work, and what is the sticking point, or is this private?
I don't know at this point. I can't. The union representatives say things that I don't hear coming from the members. So we're in a peculiar, I would like to think we will be able to work this through as a collaborative industry. And Julie and I have been working really hard. And we certainly want to make sure people are safe.
Sure.
I mean, we're both mothers. So we think about our acting company like we think about our kids.
And some of you mothers have actors as children.
Yes, exactly.
Another question on if the Mount might possibly be available as an outdoor theater.
It might. I haven't spoken with Susan about this, in part just because we have a bit of a space. We have the space outside. It would be nice if these spaces just started filling up with audience members and we had to go to another location. The Mount would be gorgeous. I did theater at the Mount 100 years ago. With Shakespeare Company. It was beautiful.
Shakespeare is doing, had been doing at the Mount, right now.
Yep.
And actually a lot of, as I said before, still a lot of very enthusiastic support for sitting outdoors.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Like Shakespeare, like going back to Central Park. Those are all of the questions that have been put into the chat so far, but if anyone has...
At the very least, Andy, I want everyone to know that if nothing else, I will be out on the grounds in Stockbridge juggling every night. And Nancy, I'm going to invite you to join me.
I think it's interesting, this whole Zoom thing. There are theaters who are trying to do readings, plays, all kinds of things on Zoom. And it's tough because everybody's at home and you can't see each other and you can't really sort of react. And then there are others who are doing all kinds of other things that I think work better given the medium, kind of like the stuff that you're doing. You know, a musician or a dancer or this or that.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to replicate the theater experience on a Zoom, which is really hard to do.
I mean, we've thought about doing a play, but it's not a play then, is it?
No.
That's right.
The kids that graduated from Juilliard, from the dance program this year, presented, if you can find it online, they did the most remarkable video. Each student that was graduating took a little block and put together this piece to music. Yo-Yo Ma was playing. I mean, it was just the most remarkable piece, and that worked beautifully. All these young people who are graduating from the dance program at Juilliard, I can't imagine what's going through their minds because there's certainly no dance right now in New York or elsewhere. But yeah, it's the Juilliard dance and their graduates. If you can pull it up, it was a piece that worked brilliantly, really brilliantly. To Ravel's Bolero, that was the music. Just fabulous.
There certainly are limits to what Zoom can do. This process seems to work well, a one-on-one conversation.
Right.
But plays, not so much.
We have all of our meetings on Zoom, and I realize I'm the only person that like moves forward when I want to talk to someone. I'm like trying to be like, what am I supposed to be doing here? I'm mostly terrifying people, I think, when I move really close. It's just a different medium that we're not used to. And those of us that work in the theater and try desperately, I think the most successful commercial I got was to do a Crest ad 100 years ago. And my mother said, well, of course, look at the size of your smile, Kathleen. Anyway.
Well, I saw the Red Bull Theater recently do Government Inspector as on Zoom. And I think earlier, all these wonderful actors had played those roles in that play. And now they were doing it from their homes. And it was tough. It was very tough to appreciate it, even no matter how talented they are.
I know. Mm.
Yeah. Whereas, what is it, Nelson, who did the Apple plays, and there were just 4 people sitting there kind of talking, because that's what the play is like. That was more successful, I felt.
Yeah, the Apple plays work, I think.
So you really have to be careful if you're going to attempt to do theater
I agree. Yeah. It's not our medium. It's not a natural fit.
No, I don't think so. Right. That's why I love
also, They also did the national re-released Andy Scott's video of Seawall, which if you haven't seen it is fantastic.
Is it?
Andy Scott in Seawall,
Seawall, right?
which is mind-blowing and actually works very well for what is now this medium, even though they had filmed it about 8 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, by next year, if this continues, although it won't continue until next year at this time, but we'll all be experts at trying to figure it out by then.
That's right.
I remember a couple of years ago when you talked before the Ollie class, when we were all together, you used a figure of 250,000, and I couldn't remember, was your real estate nut, or was that how many bottoms you had to put on seats in order for your season to be profitable?
250,000 is always the number that we're up against in terms of losses. It's always, when we put our budget together, there's always a $250,000 nut that we're trying to figure out. Where do we get that 250,000? And it's funny because it was always, well, it was 200 to 250,000 when we were just Berkshire Theater Festival and when it was Colonial Theater. And now that we're combined, it's still $200 to $250,000.
And that was a figure that stuck in my mind, but you also had another figure for how many seats you had to fill on how many days and nights.
Well, when I first came to the Berkshire Theater Festival 26 years ago, on a Friday night, there were 1,500 seats to sell among the theaters. Now that all these wonderful theaters, including the Colonial, the Garage, and seats have been added, like in the Unicorn, other theaters have been built, there are now 7,500 seats to sell on a Friday night, just to theaters. That doesn't include Tanglewood, Jacob's Pillow, anything else that anyone wants to do. So the number changed dramatically in the late 90s, right up until 2008 when the Great Recession happened. Theaters were still being adjusted and rebuilt, more seats put in. It's a reality. And at a time when Berkshire economy is really suffering, it's going to be interesting to figure out how we all come out of this and come back from this. I am waiting for the great spokesperson to go before Congress and say, the arts are about to get demolished in this country. Where is the line that's going to come from the federal government to the state governments, to the state arts councils to help us? Because we have wonderful volunteers that are supporting us through this, with wonderful foundations that continue to give, even though we can't get to most of our programming. But coming out of this, we're operating from a distinct disadvantage. We're going to have lost a lot of time, a lot of donations, ticket sales. I mean, the industry is in a very, and an industry that is concerned, and rightly so, about doing large musicals. How do you space orchestras safely? Singers, as we know, when they're on stage, when they sing, what's being sprayed is much more dangerous than you or I talking to each other in a play. So how do we begin to make safe spaces for performers indoors? And when does that ultimately happen?
Yes, we haven't heard anything about a giant stimulus package from our government for our business, your business. And
I
that
was teaching at a university level. It was really difficult. A lot of my students' parents who were paying for college didn't want their kids to major in the arts because they knew they wouldn't make a living afterwards, and they pushed them towards business. And it seems to me that we always have to make the case for the importance of the arts. It feeds their souls. Maybe it's not the pocketbooks, but there's something more important than that. And we always have to explain. We seem to always have to explain ourselves.
We certainly do.
Their importance.
And if you think about Berkshire County in particular, we have a vast education program that's in the elementary and middle schools. Shakespeare and Company has an incredible program that's in the high schools. Barrington Stage has a terrific program. Jacob's Pillow. We really are supporting the education system in a way that's often not even realized. It's the great unspoken. And that's all over the country. So how do we begin to speak to those issues and help Congress to understand what's about to happen in an entire industry? I don't know when Broadway is going to be able to reopen. Those theaters have been closed and no one has gone into them, not even to clean them.
Mhm. And we have no national theater, and funding for the arts in this country is really very hard to come by.
Exactly. So it's an important time. It's also a time where everyone is going, we're all in it and going through stuff. So I guess the loudest voice may win in some cases, but I'm not sure who should be the loudest voice right now in such a time of crisis.
Your mom thought so.
Turn things around in November. In November, if things get turned around.
Yes. Yes.
Things will get turned around, yes.
And unfortunately, so many things are repeats. I remember when New York City went bankrupt in 1975, and I was part of a group trying to convince people that the arts were important. And I had put together panels even showing that arts led to jobs, even if it was merely a question of furniture design. And I had the furniture design, I mean, but this is the same kind of thing of what goes first. And and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to balance and to make
yes. I mean, the unemployment rates are so high right now. People aren't getting meals and not, schools aren't open. It's a complicated time.
Yes.
Would you mention your daughter's role in New York?
My daughter, Emma, is the deputy mayor of administration in New York in charge. She's been in charge of the COVID response since the end of March. And it's been a very difficult and dark time in New York, obviously. Complicated. I'm very proud of all that she's done. I'm proud of how hard she continues to work. I'm especially proud of the battles that she chooses to take on in her role. And I will be really happy to see her again and have her back in the Berkshires, where she grew up.
Yes.
And we are proud of all the theaters here that are coming up with ideas and are not sitting back defeated, but are moving forward, thinking outside the box, doing everything possible to keep this thing alive, to keep theater alive.
Thank you. I mean, in some of our cases, we're too old to do anything else at this point.
You got to get out your tap shoes. You have to get out your tap shoes again. I don't know, on speculation, is there something that you think you're going to be doing in a different fashion since what we've been through?
It's so interesting because I was just talking to our staff the other day. I'm also on the Business Roundtable, on the board of the Business Roundtable. And so I'm hearing from all different industries about what we're going through in Berkshire County. And I recognize that everyone is in such a point of flux. But what I asked of the staff is, how do we begin to recognize that what was normal may never be normal for us again? And how can we, when there's so much chaos, so much coming at us, how do we actually begin to think about what we may look like next year? And I don't know what it is, Naomi, but it's just a question that we've begun to think about. What do the theaters look like? We had thought about taking all the seats out of the Fitzpatrick main stage and rearranging them for each performance. So should we get that done this winter in anticipation that next year we're setting things up in a very different way in that space? You know, Julie is certainly trying to do that in her space. So there's the fundamental of what do the seats look like, but how do we interact with each other? How do we rehearse a play? Hopefully there's going to be a vaccine. But if there's a vaccine that even comes out in December, how long does it take to get distributed? And we're a ways off from being back to whatever the new normal will look like.
And yet, we all seem to be hungry for that sense of community, which you get in theater or other events up here. And it's, I mean, I thought it was kind of wonderful and yet pathetic that we were cheering, oh, goody, a drive-in at Shakespeare. I mean, for a drive-in movie. I mean,
I
but
know.
just to park near somebody else. I mean, this is a, so I think part of the whole thing with theater is we're hungry for that kind of personal and intimate expression.
I went to get some takeout food at Shaker Mill Tavern in West Stockbridge last Saturday, and the patio was open. And so while I was waiting, I sat and had a glass of wine, and I was so happy to see people and to yell at them because I knew some people across the table. I was so excited. I came home and my husband was like, what's going on? I was like, I just talked to people. I was so happy. I was like 12. Yeah.
Dr. Lipson just reinforcing that we all miss live theater, but given the risk, we'll have to be content with streaming from Lincoln Center, National Theater, etc. Also, going back, strong support for Hershey Felder's virtual performance as Irving Berlin on Zoom is amazing. It's a live stream from Italy, and it was fabulous.
Great. Good to hear. So July 12th is the next one. Beethoven.
Beethoven.
Yes, yes, yes.
Can I just say that I think these conversations that we've had, I think for me and I think for a lot of us who have been listening and wondering what's going to happen, what's it going to be like, does anyone have the answers? I think something that I've learned, and I said this last time too, through this intimateness of Zoom that we are doing, getting to know the people who do our big theater here in our area has been incredible. And I, for one, have nothing but undying appreciation because I've always known how hard you work and you know, just in the normal theater situation, having been around it for so many years myself. But with this added burden that we have now, I just don't know how you guys are staying afloat. And now I'm finding out what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I just have kudos and deep admiration for all of you. And Kate particularly, I have to say, you've made me realize today that theater is community and community is theater. And let's just all know that. This is not a special little jewel put away in a box. No, it's all of us every day, what we're doing every day. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of new plays coming out about COVID, about all of this from your young playwrights, from playwrights all over. But thank you. I just want to, again, say a deep, deep thank you. It's been wonderful having you talk.
And Kate, I remember you're saying you would rather run 4 theaters in an insane summer than try to deal with this when seemingly there's nothing happening.
It's easier to do 10 plays in a summer than to try to get the grounds and the tent and the performers and pull it all together. And because there's nothing worse, is there, than living in fear?
Yes, that's
And
right.
so much of what we're doing is operating from a place of fear. And the very nature of theater is not to be afraid. The very nature of theater is to walk on a stage and do something almost unnatural and speak to an entire audience and tell is in our heart, which demands courage, and you just do it. But this is fear like we've never known. This is life and death fear. This is putting people at risk. This is not knowing what the world is in a month or two. And you know, it's also a time to reflect upon the realization that none of us really do know what is tomorrow or next month. And so in some ways, I trust that there will be great plays, not just about the experience of COVID today, But there will be great plays because certainly greater thinkers than me are out there right now pondering things that they haven't thought had to think about before. People are examining life in a wholly different way.
And developing an appreciation for how much theater has meant to all of us now that we don't have it.
Well, all of you at Ollie are our best audience members. You take care of our theaters. You've kept us going for a long time. And you are the audience that I certainly walk alongside, and I'm very grateful.
And we are so grateful that you took this time to be with us, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your honesty and for sharing all that's inside. Thank you.
Thanks.
And next week, Naomi, do you want to give us what we're going to be hearing next week?
Oh, yes, next week, we're going to have Jeff Barak from the Berkshire Eagle, who's interviewing Daniel Elihu Kramer from Chester, and who has also been trying to do many things on Zoom. I'm just getting so tired of Zoom. I want people. And also, Kate, I miss your magic. There's something about you. I remember going to the theater, seeing a play I didn't even care for until you told us what to look for, and afterwards, all of a sudden, the whole experience had changed. So,
Oh, I'm glad.
yeah, so your magic. And also, I love your purple couch.
Oh, my couch, that was my mother's. My couch. See?
Love it. Oh,
I
my
know, doesn't it? That couch was in storage for a long time, and I kept saying, my husband will be so upset that I'm telling this story. But I kept saying, I want that couch in the living room. He kept saying, no. It's actually kind of a pink.
Yes.
And we cannot have a pink couch in our living room. I was like, I'm getting that couch. And literally one day I just went over to the storage unit, put it in his truck, and brought it home.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My mother's couch.
It's a good play, good title for a play.
My mother's couch. Oh, a lot went on that couch.
Yes, of course.
Many conversations.
And more probably, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, thank you to Kate, and thank you to Barbara for giving us a wonderful session today. And we'll see you all next week.
Yes,
And
thank you, Barbara.
Andy, for being
Thank
our
you.
manager.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes.
Make
Enjoy
it
the beautiful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
City.